and welcome to Indian Standard Time, a brand new show on Rajya Sabha TV with me, Jyoti Malhotra. A show that speaks to global thinkers and global leaders, people who have made their mark on the sands of time. Today I'm in conversation with Gloria Steinem, the celebrated feminist, writer, author, someone who described her first journey to India in the late 1950s as a defining moment in her life. Ms. Steinem, welcome to India. Welcome to Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
You have been described as the original feminist, somebody who marshaled the spirit of women's freedoms and channelized them into a liberation movement that still reverberates around the world. How would you describe yourself?
Not that way. Because a movement is a movement by definition. And had I never been born, there would have been a movement. I hope that I've been able to contribute to it in my own way because I was a media person in the first place. So because there were and are no magazines controlled by women in the US, we started a magazine. You know, I mean, I hope that I've been able to contribute, but it's 100% clear to me that it exists. I mean, it would have gone on in any case, and I feel very lucky to be part of it.
So you don't see yourself as a reformer or as a creator or somebody who's sort of created something new and that's given something to the world?
Well, I see us all as creators, actually. I mean, we're all unique. We're each unique. So I don't feel different in that way. The reason people know me is because I am what in the 1930s I believe they called a media worker. If I were an engineer or a dancer or something, well, no, a dancer is media too, but then I might well have done something as or more important, but you know, this is I think of the media as the current campfire. You know, we're sitting around the campfire telling stories, and it's my job to keep the campfire going.
But you've been telling the story of women, stories of women around the world for now 40 or 50 years. You're going to turn 80 in a couple of months.
I know. I keep telling people that because I'm trying to make it real to myself.
Okay. You don't feel 80.
No, which may be the secret of age. You don't feel different.
But that's, you know, well, I'm sure that's both a good thing and sort of coming to terms with your age. What do you think?
You know, there have been big changes, I have to say, and most of them are quite good. It turns out that there's a you of happiness, you know, that you're all over the world. Kids are happy if they're hopefully well treated and fed, and so then you get less and less happy with teenage and kind of reach the bottom around 50 or something, and then it starts to come back up. And when you are older,
sure?
you're happy. Yeah, no, I think so, because I think that central part of life is one in which you're striving, you're overwhelmed, you're measuring up, you know, all of that. And very old cultures also say that very old and very young people are the closest to the unknown and therefore the most alike. So, not to be too philosophical here, but I do find myself suddenly feeling content, and not content, I don't know, like part of the universe in a way, and thinking spontaneously, I don't want anything I don't have.
So the stories that you've been part of, or the journey so far, you know, you're happy with it, or there's something that you feel that you could have done much better?
Oh, there are many things I could have done better, absolutely. And I'm angry, and I'm energized, and I'm all those things, but I also know that I'm in the right place in the sense that I'm doing what I love, what I care about, what I think I can be effective and help with, and that's a gift.
So why are you angry?
How long do we have?
we have time, don't worry.
No, well, look, I mean, there is, just to name one thing, I mean, which is a big thing, there is so much violence against females in the world, whether it is son preference or domestic violence, as in my country, or I just, you know, so much in war zones, and that for the first time that I'm aware of in human history, there are fewer females on the planet than males.
But is that true in the US too? I know it's true for India.
No, it's not. It's true on the globe.
Okay.
It's not
at
true
a global level.
At a global level. Okay. It's not true statistically in the US, but it is also true there that many kinds of violence, sexual violence, and perhaps especially domestic violence, that has killed more women since 9/11 than all the Americans were killed in 9/11, in Iraq, in Afghanistan, all combined.
So would you then still call yourself a feminist? And
of course. Of course. Are you kidding? Why would I not call myself a feminist?
But you know, 50 years on, what does that word really mean?
Just the same thing it always meant. I mean, in the dictionary, it means a person who believes in the full, a man or a woman, who believes in the full social, economic, and political equality of males and females. I would say, if I had written the dictionary, I would say, and acts on it as well as believes it.
Right. You know, in India at least, the overwhelming image of the women's liberation movement that you were part of, or you helped start in a sense in the 60s, is about the woman's body. You know, this whole bra-burning woman who came out on the streets and protested. Do you think that defining image is
well, nobody ever burned a bra, incidentally. That was, you know, a myth. But the reason...
Nobody burned a bra?
No, sorry. Disappointing, but anyway.
Okay.
It is about women's bodies because the control of women is about controlling reproduction. So the fundamental reason that women in various groups are in various kinds of difficulty, either because they're supposed to be closely kept because they're the women of the so-called superior group, or because they're exploited and nobody cares because they're the women of the so-called inferior group, because that's the way you maintain race or class or caste. It's to control reproduction. So it takes different forms, but it is, at its basis, it's about reproduction.
But what does then that mean? Is that a woman must have control over her own reproduction?
Right, right. So, I mean, by just saying, with what seems to be a very reasonable way, we get to control our own physical selves. You know, the power of the society, the state stops at our skins. We are seizing control of the means of reproduction. So it's you know, it's quite basic.
And how does then that tie into ideology? For example, whether it's left of center movements or whether it's centrist, you know, politics. How do you see yourself as a political activist and as a feminist?
It's up to them. I mean, you
know,
but
as you, how do you see yourself?
Well, it depends on the group, because there have been some very left groups that were very bad about women. But for the most part, I would say the left in the middle is better about female equality than the ultra right wing, because they are more devoted, whether they're religious or economic, more devoted to maintaining women as the cheap labor force of the world. And also, they're often very devoted to caste or class or race or religion, and that requires restricting women too. So on the average, certainly the right wing is much worse.
And in Barack Obama's America, how do you look at feminism? Is he a feminist?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Yes, we put him on the cover of Ms. Magazine saying this is what a feminist looks like. Okay. Yes, he definitely is. Had a wonderful mother who was you know, very accomplished very and creative and very socially conscious. And he comes from a matrilineal cultural group in Kenya. No, he is a feminist. Okay. But we have, as you have, a very strong right-wing backlash based on it's racist, it's sexist, and it's angry. You know, because in our case, for instance, in a very short time, we will no longer be a majority European American, a majority white country, and they're very anxious about that. So you will find that the same groups are against immigration, against sex education, against safe and legal abortion, against contraception, And they just often say, well, the white women don't have enough babies, the white race is committing suicide. Right.
So many more Hispanics and people of African American origin, Indians, Asians, and are they worried about people like us?
Yeah, because they're racist. I mean, it seems to me that I think it will be great for the United States to look more like the world, because then we will be hopefully less isolationist. We will understand the world better. I mean,
and less exceptional.
Why not?
There's this sort of the image of the ugly American outside America.
Yes, right. No,
which is not a universal one. There are amazing Americans, as we all know.
Yeah, no, it's a wonderful country in this because it has hope. I think there were so many people who came there under difficult circumstances from other countries that we were pre-selected for hope.
Right.
And I value that about the country. And in any case, it's my country, so it's my job to make it better.
Right. But you see, 50 years on, you think it is a better country, especially in terms of women's rights?
Much better, much better. I mean, 50 years ago, violence against women had no words. Domestic violence didn't exist as a phrase. There was no equal pay legislation. And in fact, people would say to you, well, of course you have to get paid less. It was just totally out in the open.
Mm-hmm. We're going to take a very quick break, Gloria, but we'll be back very soon in this conversation onward. We're going to take a very quick break now. You're watching Gloria Steinem in conversation with me on Rajya Sabha TV. Welcome back. This is Indian Standard Time, a brand new show on Rajya Sabha TV, and I'm in conversation with Gloria Steinem, celebrated feminist all around the world. Gloria, I wanted to ask you about your India story. You came to India first in the late 1950s, and it seems you've never left.
I wish I could live in two places at once, but I do feel very much that this is my second home, and it had and still has a huge influence on me.
So what is it that you came for 10 days, I believe, and then you stayed on?
No, actually I had a fellowship, and
right.
I came for 9 months and stayed for 2 years.
Okay.
Right.
And why did you do that? What was it that interested you? And that
it was a mix of reasons in that way that life is never simple, right? It was partly because I was drawn to India because I'd had lots of childhood books about India because my mother and both my grandmothers were theosophists. It was partly because I took a course in college, which was very rare then to have a non-European kind of, and also because it was newly independent. So all of the hopes that also focused, say, on South Africa, focused on India, that very much appealed to me. And finally, I was engaged and trying not to get married. So, so I had to go very far away.
So you came to India to escape marriage?
Right.
And did you succeed in your mission?
Yes. Okay. And incidentally, I've stayed friends with he was a very nice man. It just that, it would have been wrong for both of us. Now I was friends with him, with his daughters.
That's nice.
Right.
But you came for 9 months on this fellowship, and you stayed for 2 years. So what made you change? Why did you do that? Why did you stay for 2 years?
Well, some of it was I didn't know what I was going home to. I had no job. I had just got out of college. I didn't know what I was doing.
And you toured around the country, is it?
Yes,
okay.
Yeah. First, I lived in Miranda House here in New Delhi, and then I began to travel around the country. And also, I had long since run out of money, so I began to make a little bit of money by writing for newspapers. And it just took on a life of its own. I knew people here who were my friends.
And I remember reading somewhere that you walked with, from morning to night with people, almost like a pilgrim.
Well, I didn't exactly set out to do that, but I was aware of the land reform movement of Vinoba Bhave that I had read about. So
the Bhudan movement.
Yes. So, part of my curiosity was that I got off the third-class railroad women-only car going down the coast, and took a rickety bus, to see what was going on at this headquarters. And it happened to be in the midst of caste riots in the Ramnad area. So that center had been sending.
In Kerala, Ramnad in Kerala.
No, not in. Ramnad is not in Kerala. It's above Kerala, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Tamil Nadu.
And they were sending small groups or pairs, but they needed a woman with each one, they felt, so that women would feel comfortable coming to the meetings. And they had run out of women. So they asked me if I would go, and I did, and it was life-changing in many ways. Just to spend, I don't even remember, maybe a week, I can't remember how long it was, with no possessions, with a cup, a comb, and a sari. And they said, the villagers will either look after us because they too want peace and they care, or they won't. And if they don't, we can't help anyway, because it means that, So it was very freeing. It was a big education in organizing the way organizing should be, that is, from the ground up.
But land reform is connected with women's issues, do you think?
Yes, sure.
In what way?
Well, the ownership of land is obviously crucial, and in the original ancient cultures that were often matrilineal, and so there was tribal ownership of the land, group ownership of whatever it was, or the land passed through women in a matrilineal sense. And for instance, and colonialism totally did women in by coming into a country, in Africa as well, and in the States as well, giving a deed, because they were already patriarchal. They were the pioneers of patriarchy. So they registered the land only in the man's name, and women were instantaneously landless and much less powerful.
So did India make you a feminist?
Yes, probably. I didn't know what a feminist was, but because here women had been such a huge part of the independence movement, and also had their own huge movement against child marriage, against sati, that had all been going on. There were women like Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay, who was, very obviously present in that way. Right. And I had not seen that in my own country.
But in a sense, all these women who were present in the independence movement that Gandhi brought together, sometimes I feel that 67 years on, we haven't fulfilled our own promises to ourselves.
Well, wait a minute, because both of our countries suffer from having women written out of history. And it happened that when I came back in 1980, my friend here, Devaki Jain, and I decided that we should write a pamphlet about Gandhian tactics, because being nonviolent, they were well suited to women around the world. So we got to Kamala Devi Chattopadhyay in our little earnest research, and she listened to us very patiently, and then she said, well, my dears, we taught him everything he knew.
I see, that's lovely.
that the independence movement had learned mass peaceful tactics from the women's movement. Yeah, but that is, and other, from Tolstoy, from other places too, but very much from the women's movement, and yet that was not present in the description.
Right, and also when India becomes independent, I mean, we do have great leaders. You have Nehru, you have Sardar Patel, you have Maulana Azad, but you don't really have the women standing shoulder to shoulder with them.
No, and it's the nature of a less powerful group, whether it is less powerful because of sex or race or caste, whatever it is, that you recover your history and then it's lost again, and then you recover it again and then it's lost again, and then it takes a long time to equalize the writing of history even.
You've written a lot about and spoken a lot about institutions like the family and how fundamental they are to to a woman's life, to a woman.
And a man too, right?
And a man. So, how do you deal with the family? Do you think it's a family is sort of a divisive sort of an institution that undermines a woman, or what does it do?
Well, it depends whether it's an egalitarian democratic family or whether it's a patriarchal dictatorial family. And it's very unlikely that we have democracy in the street and in public places if we don't have some degree of democracy in the family, because then we grow up thinking that it can't be. What's in our family we think is inevitable or natural, or at least it takes quite a while to change. Right. So democracy in the family is crucial, absolutely crucial.
And this book that you're launching on this visit to India, called As If Women Matter, what's that about? Don't they matter? Women matter. I hope they matter.
Well, it's a little art, I suppose, as if women, because if we look at the world as if women matter, as if we had our own names, as if we were as important as men, as if we controlled our bodies, as if we weren't the primary victims of violence, as if, so I think it's important to look as if, because then we have some hope and vision and we can try to make the future resemble that.
Mm-hmm. And I guess in the U.S. or in your country, there's a lot of talk even today about sex and race. Mm-hmm. While in India we have our issues are of caste,
right,
and religion.
And ours are of religion too, not to the same degree, but yeah.
Okay,
right.
But how do you think these intersect with feminism or with women's issues? And what do you think is more sort of fundamental?
They're both fundamental, absolutely. And as soon as you have a strong caste or class or race system, then women are more restricted, because you can't continue caste, class, and race without restricting reproduction. Mm-hmm. So they can only be uprooted together. It is not possible. It is not possible to deal with race or caste or class without also freeing women.
So I asked you about Barack Obama's America, but in a sense in India, what would you say to our leaders? Interestingly, there are a lot of women in politics in India. You have Sonia Gandhi, who's with the Congress Party, Mayawati with the Bahujan Samaj Party, the Dalits, Sushma Swaraj with the Bharatiya Janata Party, the right-wing nationalist party, and several women as regional leaders. But do you think, as a woman leader, do you think that they're sort of redeeming themselves to women's issues in India?
They're not yet a critical mass in either of our countries, so we can't hold them responsible except in proportion to their presence. Also, in this country, even more than in mine, family has great importance. If Indira Gandhi had had a brother, probably he would have been prime minister. But here, family has such an importance that even the disaster of being a female is compensated for by family.
So like Sonia Gandhi has 2 children, a boy and a girl, but her son is inheriting power.
Yeah, which, well, anyway, it's not a hard and fast rule, but I'm just saying that in general, family doesn't compensate for gender or for sex quite as much for us. But we did have, when this wave of feminism started, the only women who were elected into high office nationally were widows, because they'd been married to guys who were in the Senate. He died through no fault of hers.
And they were done with families, and then, they were sort of moving.
No, it wasn't about that. It was just, it was only acceptable to carry on your husband's work. It was not acceptable to have political ambitions on your own. And so we kept saying to men, you surely don't want to have to die off, before we. So we started in a much more difficult place. We've made a lot of progress, but it's nowhere near equal. We're way, way, way down the list of countries in the world in terms of political representation.
So Gloria, last question. What would you say to these women leaders who've made it to the top in politics in many ways? What would you say to them?
You know, it's not for me to say. I would say, first of all, it's not about biology necessarily, it's about consciousness. Because just as you can have a member of a racial group who denies the majority views of that race, you can have a woman who does too. It's about consciousness. But on the average, because of experience, you know, because of walking around 50 years as a female or as a member of a particular racial group, you're more likely, as we see by the record, to vote in a way that is good for the equality of that group. I would just say, listen, you know, listen to the desire for less violence, listen to the desire for better paid domestic workers, listen to
greater control over themselves.
Well, just I would say, who was it who said? I guess it was Gandhi who said about Western civilization it would be a good idea. Well, I would say about democracy, what a good idea. And you can't have democracy without feminism, and you can't have democracy with racism and a caste system. You know, so we're working toward democracy.
Okay. Gloria Steinem, thank you so much for talking to Rajya Sabha TV.
Thank you. Thank you.
You've just been watching Gloria Steinem in conversation with me. This is Indian Standard Time, a brand new show on Rajya Sabha TV. Thank you so much for watching.